Hey folks, how you doing? Got a couple of questions for you. Do you have a door on your home? Do you keep it locked? These are just a couple of things we'll be talking about today on the proxy principle. Hello again, friends, and welcome to the Proxy Principle. I'm Candi. Are you ever watching a television show or a movie and a regular character enters their home and you notice that they didn't lock the door after they came in? Does it ever take you out of the storyline? It always knocks me right out of it. Maybe it's just because I've had this habit my entire life. I asked my mister about this the other day and he said, it never occurred to him because a lot of doors lock on their own. So now when I watch a show and this happens, on top of it already taking me out of the show, I'll be wondering if their door automatically locks or not. And I'm sorry if this has never occurred to you before while watching your shows, but now it will because I brought it up. Kind of like hearing a song that you don't really care for, and now you can't get it out of your head. But what if you're watching a show and someone breaks in? I'm going to bet you notice that because it's part of the storyline. Even the nosy neighbor on the show is going to notice if someone does not live in that house next door and they're entering their neighbor's house. Now, I'm going to give you some spoiler alerts by giving you the title of some shows that I'm using to build a case. So if you don't want to know a storyline, maybe plug your ears for a minute. This one's a little older, but if you've seen The Righteous Gemstones, check this one out that I'm about to mention, because it has some of the same leading actors in it. Have you seen the show Vice Principals starring Danny McBride and Walter Goggins? It's a dark comedy about two wildly different vice principals, an overprotective outcast and a popular rival. They wage a petty power struggle to become principal. When an outsider is hired instead, they begrudgingly team up to sabotage her and reclaim their shot at the top. It's a pretty funny show because it's pretty ridiculous. But in one of the first episodes, these two principal wannabes break into their new boss's house to see if they can find some dirt on her. They can't, but their rage ensues, and in their rage, they trash her house beyond recognition, because they don't like that she was given the position that they felt they were entitled to have. While you're watching, your reaction is to laugh, because it's a comedy. And that's because comedy comes from tragedy a lot of the time. And on top of it, their boss is a female, and she's a woman of color. Now, these details are supposed to add to the viewer's emotional response. Does it trigger you in any way? And if so, why? Because that might be natural for some. That's why they wrote it that way. The writers want to create conflict so that you feel it. They're raising the stakes. Let me give you another example. Have you watched the show Your Friends and Neighbors, starring John Hamm and Amanda Peet? John's character, Coop, after losing his job and facing divorce, is a disgraced hedge fund manager who turns to robbing his wealthy neighbors to uphold his lavish lifestyle, until one break-in reveals secrets far more dangerous than he expected. Now, this one isn't a comedy, and even though our instincts tell us it's wrong for some reason, the only thing I was feeling while watching him break into his friends' houses was, you'd better get out of there. And he was cutting it close to getting caught every time. It didn't seem to bother me as the viewer as much that he was breaking in and stealing from his neighbors. One, because he's the main character. And two, because he knows these people. They're more than acquaintances. Was your response similar to mine when you watched it, or just in my telling you about the storyline? Of course, we know what it would feel like if one of our friends was getting screwed every which way from Sunday. I mean, he lost his job, he lost his wife, he lost his kids, and he lost his home. But Would it not feel like a betrayal if you found out that your friend was stealing from you when he could have just asked for help? Television and film evoke feelings. Maybe you feel something different than I do. I have a pretty dark sense of humor, so it probably does affect you way differently than it does me. And no one's life experiences are the same as mine. But I would bet the most people know the difference between right and wrong. Do you believe stealing is wrong? Do you believe breaking into someone's house that is not yours to be wrong? Are you not taking a chance of getting in trouble if you get caught breaking into your neighbor's house? And is it a hate crime if your neighbors are of another ethnicity or gender, whether you know them or not? I personally don't believe in hate crimes because I believe crime is crime. It may play into the motive, but a lot of times people are driven to break the law out of other emotional responses that occur without conscious control, such as desperation or fear or of something being found out. Sometimes people get off on doing things they're not supposed to, and some are blackmailed or even incentivized by others to do so. Now, here's another question. If you weren't watching a TV show or film, but you had a friend who told you this happened to them, and it was happening to a few of your other friends, giving you warning because you all happen to live in the same neighborhood, what would your gut reaction be? I might ask my friend if they had contacted the authorities to report the break-ins. I might ask if anyone had been hurt. But what if your friend in turn responded with, "No, that would be racist"? Well, that, my friends, is what's happening all across our nation. So I ask you, do you have a door on your home? Do you keep it locked? Why? It's not to keep people out. It's to protect the people inside. You get to choose who comes in. Does that make you a racist for wanting to do so? So why on earth are friends and neighbors calling each other racists when all a lot of us are wanting to do is secure a door and use a lock on our homes? What am I really talking about? I'm talking about immigration. We love immigrants. And a lot of us have friends who are immigrants. But we're not racist because we want a vetting system to be in place. I have some other questions. If you truly, really care about your friends who are immigrants, how is it that you have helped them? Because obviously, there are things we can all be doing. How might you be able to help? Because do you really believe at this juncture, after observing 2020's Summer of Love, the way J6 in DC played out, followed by LA's J7 through whatever date we are on now, where we've had riots turn into mostly peaceful protests? Does this really serve anybody except for egos? And if so, how so? I mean, they just seem inorganic at this point. Protests may have served their purpose at one time in history, but if you allow yourself to evolve as a society, let's really be honest and call a duck a duck. Is it not just a big block party for people who don't have anything else going on? Is it not for people to say, look at me, I help? And aren't the taxpayers paying for law enforcement to be there to keep property as well as protesters safe? Aren't we in enough debt? I know I'm sounding judgy on this one, but I just don't get it. I feel there are better ways to actually make a difference than posting on your social media accounts how great you are by holding up a sign that you decorated in glitter stating how much you hate something or someone. And that might sound like what I'm doing here, but I'm not. I'm actually here to offer some solutions. And here are some things you can actually do to help your immigrant friends. How about a ride to the immigration office for the ones who have been biding their time waiting for their paperwork to be processed, and for years sometimes? How many times have you done that? That might cost you as much in gas or the bus ride you might have spent to get to that protest. What about standing in line with them while they wait to get into the immigration office, so that if they need to run to the restroom, you can hold their place in that 8-hour line. Yep, sometimes they're standing there from 9 to 5, only for them to be told that their paperwork hasn't been processed yet. People gotta pee, folks. And speaking of paperwork, how about helping them fill it out? I know most of it is translated these days, but sometimes the wording can get tricky. Better yet, teach them how to speak English. Hold their hand. Do you know how hard it is to assimilate to a new country, especially if you don't speak the language? I would think all of these things would go much further and be way more effective than blocking traffic on the 101 with a group of people that you don't know doing a line dance to Achy Breaky Heart in Spanish, only for you to snap a pic as the greatest virtue signaler of all time for your social media pages. What about offering them sleeping quarters with heat and air conditioning? Have you done that? And in having the basic utilities of living quarters, water and good working plumbing would be included, would it not? Have you offered this? Wait, but there's more. Have you ever offered your non-citizen friends 3 square meals a day, let alone 1? What about a recreational facility to use? Now we're cooking. But what's behind door number 5? What if you could give your friends the choice of what I just recommended, or pay for your non-citizen friend's ticket back home so that they wouldn't get in trouble for being here illegally, and on top of it, give them $1,000 petty cash so that they could have a chance to come back to our country and to come here legally? Well, hot dog, holly golly, that's a pretty good freaking deal. And it's pretty humane of you, if you ask me. Have you done that? Have you offered that to your friends? No? Well, you know who has? Somebody that a lot of people don't like. And his name is Donald Trump. Those are pretty good conditions to be offering someone who is taking a chance on being here illegally by giving them a second chance. But your American friends are racist for saying so. Now, here are some additional ways that some of you folks who have businesses or some extra money laying around can assist our immigrant friends. I personally have done the following. I'm not telling you this because I need accolades. I'm simply giving you ideas that might be more effective than being within range of a rubber bullet. I have independently contracted musicians to play with my band over the last 20 years. Nearly half of them are from other countries and or are of other ethnicities. I include the ethnicity part only because so many people are hung up on race these days, like some of our friends calling us racists because we want to lock our doors at night. How silly is that? I hired these people based off of their abilities, based off of merit. And I love them like they are my brothers and sisters. I do not care who they screw. I do not care what color of skin they dwell in. We have a really good time together, working as a team by leading people and partying. That's where you do the achy breaky heart line dance. They contribute to the business. They contribute to society. It's a really fun way to make a buck or two, and I would do anything I can to keep them here, because to some extent, they have become my brothers and sisters. I have spent more time with them than some of my actual family members. I've written at least a half a dozen memos or letters to immigration authorities to support my musicians' applications for their visas or other immigration benefits. Now, if you don't have a means of giving someone the opportunity to come work for you, and this is something that seems to weigh heavily on your heart, maybe you could become a sponsor for one of your non-citizen friends. And if you don't have the money for that, get your group that you went to the protest with and pool your monies to sponsor a non-citizen that you know is in need. As part of the sponsorship, executed in the form of an affidavit of support, your agreement will attest that you and or your group have sufficient income and resources to meet the non-citizen's needs. Can you make that kind of commitment? Because some people assume that all American taxpayers should be able to do so. You think we all should be charitable in that way, when some people are just trying to make ends meet to feed and take care of their own families. So if you can't make that kind of commitment as an individual, then maybe you shouldn't be expecting your fellow Americans to do it either. And by the way, it's not charity if it's forced. So, yes, if this is a topic that weighs heavily on your heart, then these are a few things that you can do for your non-citizen friends who are doing things the right way. Or maybe some of them came here at one point legally and something happened somewhere down the line where they're now here illegally. This is where we need to keep our friends accountable and help them in abiding by the laws of our land by encouraging them to keep up on the paperwork or doing some of the things I mentioned before. So do not fret. There is an abundance of things you can do to help your friends remain and regain legal permission to be here in America. We've gotten to a place where people are mistaking enablement for empathy. Enabling them will not serve anyone, but actually helping them will serve us all. Now, I've been hearing a lot of people say that alligator Alcatraz is unsafe or inhumane. Well, how unsafe was it for people to cross deserts and borders and trusted cartels that they signed up for? I know it's not the Roosevelt, but I'm pretty sure that people brush their teeth and poop in the same vicinity. And I know some of these folks didn't cross, by climbing over the wall or brazenly cutting down wall bollards with power tools to allow thousands of migrants to flood into the U.S., the normal illegal way. Nope. Some were flown in illegally while Americans were sleeping. I wonder who allowed that. I wonder who bankrolled it. And they were incentivized to come through an open border with debit cards, insurance, free health care, free child care, etc. And all on your dime. So some of those illegals were even interviewed saying they paid thousands of dollars to get here, and they do not care if American taxpayers have to foot the bill once they have arrived. Some of them weren't even staying here. They were registering on the app that the Biden administration made available to them, then went back home to collect the money in their home countries. $56 billion were sent to illegal aliens' home countries last year. Sounds a little like one of those TV shows I was talking about earlier, doesn't it? You may know who your neighbor is, but they are stealing from you. And to what end? Some believe it was to gain voting power, which is why it is important, if you are a firm believer in democracy, that unless you are and/or until someone becomes a citizen, you should not be able to vote in our elections. I know you're saying, but Candi, it's illegal for immigrants to vote in elections. Oh, so now you're going to use the word illegal properly. According to the BBC, studies suggest cases of this actually happening are very rare. It's not zero. Some people slip through the cracks for various reasons, but it's nowhere near the level to impact the income of an election. Let me tell you something. If their vote cancels your vote, it can have an impact. And I haven't even gotten warmed up on the census yet. But the current practice of including illegal immigrants in population counts for political representation creates a distorted incentive. Encouraging open border policies like the one our last administration initiated and perpetuated and lied through their teeth to you about even happening? Don't think for a minute that that increase didn't affect the political influence of states and voters that welcome them. It shifts lawmaking results unequivocally, kind of like when that tugboat came to rescue Carnival's poop cruise of 2013. That ship was already depleted of a lot of resources, and in a very short time. And the shifted waste, that became the shit show. That's why a lot of us elected a certain someone to clean up what had been America's shipwreck. We needed someone that was willing to do so. Let's talk about some other reasons on the importance of who gets to vote while in tandem with who's humane and who's not. We found out that the radical group behind the recent LA riots received over $34 million in government funding. I'm sure it is a coincidence that this same group, known as the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, gave $472,000 to support Gavin Newsom's campaign to be governor. Think of how much of that money could have gone to immigrants instead of riots. not to mention the amount of damage that was caused by the rioters to business owners in downtown LA. Some of those business owners were migrants who came here lawfully to build a better life for themselves. $1 billion in damages. Instead of federal government giving them small business loans for recovery, those monies could have been allocated to immigrant programs. What a freaking waste. But let's dig a little deeper. During the ongoing border crisis under the Biden administration, despite assurances from President Biden, Vice President Harris, and DHS Secretary Mayorkas that the border was secure, it was revealed that millions of migrants had entered the country illegally. Additionally, certain sponsors, including NGOs, otherwise known as non-governmental organizations, played a significant role in worsening the situation by facilitating the processing and transportation of tens of thousands of migrants into the interior of the U.S. That's who I was talking about in regards to flying them in while you were sleeping, in case you weren't picking up on that. Contrary to some political claims, such as those made by President Trump, Mexican drug cartels don't rely primarily on illegal border crossers to smuggle fentanyl. In reality, the situation is arguably more alarming. The cartels often use individuals who cross the border legally, many of whom are high school or college students, to traffic fentanyl. These individuals are typically chosen because they have clean criminal records and are therefore less likely to be suspected. Regardless, this raises serious questions about the incentives being offered to these young people and the broader ramifications for public safety and health. As one expert put it, it's very concerning to see these young high school kids carrying fentanyl strapped to their bodies, risking their own health. Do you think that's humane? Your past administration did. A friend of mine posted this online recently, and I found it to make a lot of sense. Italy will issue work visas to bring immigrants in to address labor shortage, probably the low-wage labor shortage. Issuing a certain number of work visas a year is the perfect solution that encourages people to come legally to a country, especially for low-wage workers. The immigrants wouldn't have to be living in the shadows, and it would help them to live with dignity, without the fear of being deported. They would be paying taxes and eventually should be able to get permanent residence, especially if they are contributing to the economy. She said it is very sad to see what's happening right now in the U.S. when work permits are not that difficult to issue, but there is no political will to change the system. My friend, I believe we used to do it this way, but the reason we've had to cut back is due to the allowance of 20 million plus immigrants, some not even vetted, into our country over the last 4 years. It's almost like starting from ground zero, because we have to start accounting for everyone that's here. And that brings up the census. The census count includes everyone living in the United States except for foreign tourists and business travelers in the country temporarily. The political impact of immigration isn't solely due to where immigrants settle. It also depends on how large a portion of the overall population they represent is. Even if immigrants become more geographically dispersed, a substantial immigrant population can still significantly influence the allocation of House seats and electoral college votes. As long as immigration levels, both legal and illegal, remain high, the shift in political power within Washington will continue. So, to put this in perspective, there's been a cheat with additional members of Congress due to the amount of immigrants brought into our country legally and illegally. Getting a handle on this could possibly impact the majority in the U.S. House. And if you believe in democracy, this makes sense. This is not even whether it's legal for people to vote or not. This is solution-oriented for a party that wants power over the will of the country's citizens. Whether you like it or not, cheating is a solution. They trash the House beyond recognition by incentivizing neighbors to break into the country, because they don't like the will of its own people having the position of power that they felt they were entitled to have. It might not be the way you do it, but for those who think there is no other way, For those who might be desperate, they have nothing to lose by cheating. And it works. Some people get away with it. But again, if you truly believe in what you call democracy, some of us have caught on, and we no longer want to turn a blind eye. While illegal immigrants and non-citizens cannot vote, they should not be used as political tools in the reapportioning efforts of any party. The census must count all residents, citizens and non-citizens alike, but it should clearly distinguish between them to ensure transparency and fairness in representation. This is why it is imperative that you are here legally. But this wasn't what woke some of us up who weren't already awake on how immigration policies had been broken by our last administration. And it wasn't necessarily because of Laken Riley, the Georgia nursing student whose brutal murder was committed by an immigrant released into the United States after crossing the border illegally under Joe Biden. It wasn't necessarily Rachel Morin's killer, also an illegal immigrant, already wanted by Interpol in connection with another woman's murder and alleged rape of a woman and her 9-year-old child in California before going to Maryland, where Morin's remains were found battered and stuffed into a culvert. I'm going to go back as far as asking if any of you remember the 2015 shooting of the death of San Francisco woman Katie Steinle. Keep in mind that this was before Trump was even in office for his first term. 32-year-old Katie was shot and killed while taking a walk with her father and a friend along Pier 14 in San Fran. She was hit in the back by a single bullet by a man who said it was an accident. He was an illegal immigrant who had been deported, not one time, not 2 times. You want to take a guess? He had been deported 5 times. Now, maybe it was an accident, but was the gun registered? Because the illegal alien wasn't. And could it have saved her life had he had not been in that spot at that exact time? Actions have consequences, and I'm baffled at the amount of people here who have no desire to vet the people flooding into this country, and sometimes repeatedly like this man. I'm also perplexed at the amount of people who think they are entitled to bypass our laws. Look, the media can play a powerful role in shaping public perception on immigration. Just like the writers and actors of the television shows that I mentioned earlier in this podcast, they evoke certain feelings, certain emotions. And depending on who is telling the story, it can create a distorted view of the issue. And in this case, the focus is on border security and undocumented immigrants, which is why the term now used by those who want to downplay the true definition of what an illegal alien really is. It makes it harder to foster constructive dialogue or reach a fair consensus on immigration policy. So, on a humanitarian level, are we providing what's needed for our friends and family, whether they're non-citizens or Americans? Or have we been seduced as those searching for something more than a superficial life, yearning to be part of something that seems empathetic? All I know is this: Americans want safety. Immigrants need help. It shouldn't be that hard to find a happy medium. So the next time you're thinking about calling your friend a racist because they want a secure border, maybe ask yourself first, why do I lock my doors at night? Or even have a door on my home for that matter? Because it's basically the same thing, just on a larger scale. And maybe give your friends that you're considering calling a racist the benefit of the doubt that they are actually helping your immigrant friends with action rather than partying at protests. They just don't post it all over social media because they don't need applause for doing so. Just some things to think about, friends. And I would love to get your feedback. Feel free to reach out on any of my platforms where you may be listening. I know it's a sensitive and complex topic. I believe when we all bring solutions to the table, the cream of the crop always rise to the top. I'm Candi Rands, and I appreciate you joining me here today on The Proxy Principle.